Hello and welcome to this course on getting past the gatekeeper. In this course, we'll show you how to reach more decision makers with your B2B sales calls. This course is divided into 3 modules. Modules 1 and 2 will give you a brief overview of gatekeepers and useful methods and tactics for getting past them. And Module 3 goes over pre-call intelligence gathering. By the time this course is over, you'll be equipped with the tools and methods you need to get past gatekeepers so you can make more sales. So without further ado, let's dive into the first module. Okay guys, welcome to Module 1. In this module, our trainer will give you a brief overview of gatekeepers and some ideas of how to get past them. So get ready to take some notes and let's jump right in.
The dreaded gatekeeper has been a part of the cold calling game for decades. Sales professionals have spent their careers trying to develop and fine-tune different tactics for getting past these B2B guardians and through to the decision makers so they can book appointments and make sales. A gatekeeper is someone whose job it is to keep you away from the person you're trying to reach. Typically, they're a receptionist, secretary, or executive assistant, although that's not always the case. They man the phones. They take incoming calls. They assess those calls to determine whether they're important or legitimate, expected calls. And they filter out the calls that they think the decision maker won't want to be bothered with. They know you're out there. They've been warned, trained, even coached to look for telltale signs of cold calling salespeople. They've been lied to, tricked, made to look like fools around the office by some cold callers, and many of them regularly lie themselves too, although it's usually to say someone is in a meeting or not in the office. For most of them, it's not their first rodeo. They're ready for you. And with every passing year, they're getting smarter, savvier, and better at their job, which is why you and your business need to stay on the cutting edge of this concept as well. Let's go over some ways you can do that. So for starters, remember what your parents taught you. And what I mean is just use basic manners. Make sure you're saying please, make sure you're saying thank you, make sure you're using emphatic versions of those, like thanks so much for your help, and so on and so forth. Be nice. You have to keep in mind the gatekeeper is someone who the company likes. That's why they're in that position. They wouldn't be manning the phones if the company didn't like him or her. Does that kind of make sense? If they're sitting there at the counter and they've had that job, clearly the decision maker that you want to work with, whose good side you want to be on, likes this person enough to keep her or him there in that position. So the last thing you want to do is be on bad terms with someone who everybody in the office likes. And the very last thing you want to do is end up on the blacklist for being rude or impatient. Social bonds and camaraderie, all that's really very real in an office environment. And in many cases, that will override profit, which means no matter how cool what you're selling is, they'll choose not to do business with you if they have the impression that you are not respecting one of their valued team members. Next, use first names, and that includes theirs, not just the executives. So if you call in, and the gatekeeper says, "Munder Difflin, this is Pam, how may I direct your call?" Your first sentence should be, "Hi Pam, can you put me through to such and such?" Mention the gatekeeper's name. This has been proven time and time again. It's not a silver bullet, right? It's not a skeleton key. It's not going to guarantee that you get through, but it does, and it's been proven, it does have some psychological advantages. So mention their first name and use the executive's first name when possible, if you did a good job of collecting that information to begin with. Next thing is understand their perspective. And what I really mean is, no kidding, sit down and pretend, do a thought experiment. Pretend that you are the gatekeeper at their company. Maybe you have a scary boss or an impatient boss. Maybe you have a boss who you really, really like and respect, and you're actually motivated to keep the annoying salespeople away from him or her. Maybe you deal with cold callers all day long. Maybe by the time you're calling in, they've already had like 10 cold calls that morning. Maybe you as a gatekeeper, remember we're pretending to be in their shoes here. Maybe you deal with people lying all the time, people trying to pull those sly little tricks that you hear about, and you're annoyed by it, understandably. Understand their perspective so that you'll have that in your back pocket when you call them. Next, just practice good listening skills. Be a human when they're speaking. If they're saying things, practice those good active listening skills that we've all learned. If they say, oh man, he's really busy now, you can say, oh yeah, I can imagine. I know that guy's busy. Or, oh, we've really been swamped because of XYZ recent event. And you can say, oh, no kidding, wow. Even something as simple as sure, or totally understand being inserted here or there when they're saying things or explaining a situation can go a long way in increasing likability and making yourself sound much more human. Next, to piggyback on using their name after they've told it to you, don't just use it in a sentence during the call, but mark it down, remember it. Make a note in your CRM for when you call them again. Because if you call them and you're immediately using their name, or if you're reaching out via email and using their name, again, it establishes you as an actual fellow human being and has a positive psychological effect on the whole thing. So keep that in mind, put it down in your CRM. That name should be as important to you as the name of the executive you're trying to reach, as far as the intelligence gathering and putting the information into your CRM. Next, make sure you end on a positive note no matter what happened. And what that means is, even if you didn't have success, you didn't get through the decision maker, you got kicked back or rejected again, don't let those emotions show in your voice. You have to mask that and end on a very positive and appreciative note. Oh, that's too bad. All right, I'll try some other time. Thanks so much for your time. Have a great rest of your day. Make sure it's a positive tone and a positive message when you end, because guess what? You're going to have to be dealing with that gatekeeper again. And you want to make sure you maintain the positivity in that relationship between you and them. Next, and this is kind of an outside-the-box thing, and it might actually be a little bit cliche if you use it in the wrong situation, but if you actually spent a little bit of time on the phone with the gatekeeper, you established a connection and they tried to help you reach so-and-so or gave you some info on this or that, it wouldn't hurt to send them a little thank you card. Even a thank you email, but a thank you card would be really classy. Again, don't send them a thank you card if all you had was like a 2-sentence conversation, because that'll seem pretentious. You want to avoid being pretentious. And that actually applies to a lot of things that we're going to learn that can be really good tactics for getting past gatekeepers. But if you're not really careful with how and when you use them, it can come off as pretentious or disingenuous. Okay, but this, if the circumstances call for it and your gut tells you that this would be a good idea, go ahead and send a thank you card, because then your name will be more memorable to them, okay, and they're more likely to pay a little bit more attention to you when you call or follow up in the future. So all of these have been pretty basic points, right? Pretty elementary. There are no ninja hacks shared yet. We just wanted to cover the basics here so that you're prepared mentally when you start your cold calling. This is sort of the basic 101 level foundation that everybody should have. In the next video, we'll cover some more advanced tips and tricks for getting past the gatekeeper.
Hey folks, welcome to Module 2. In this module, our trainer will cover even more methods and tactics for getting past the gatekeeper. So, get ready to take some notes and let's jump right in.
So one of the most important things you can do when trying to get past a gatekeeper is be different. Be different. You have to understand that from the gatekeeper's perspective, they have a very clear pattern, a very clear routine that they go through. It's a cycle, right? They answer the phone, they ask why the person is calling, they listen to the explanation of why they're calling, they say that the decision maker is busy, whether it's true or not. Well, it's usually, probably true, right? And then they get rid of the salesperson. They get rid of you, the pesky cold caller. That's their routine. Figure out who it is and why they're calling, listen to the explanation, say that the person is too busy, get rid of the cold caller. That's their pattern. And the only way you're going to get out of that pattern, which I assure you they go through all the time, this is not their first rodeo. The only way is through differentiation. You have to be different somehow. And there's no one specific way to do that. There's a bunch of things that you can do to be a little bit different. And we'll cover some of those throughout the rest of this video. One thing that you might want to consider is to do a little bit of research about something specific about the company that is ongoing at the moment, like a strategic initiative or, the fact that maybe they just recently opened up an office and expanded into another area, so they're likely to have, a need for this or that service, or the fact that they're in the market for a certain type of solution, or maybe even bad news recently, but be careful with the bad news. Be careful with bringing that up. But if it's something recently, and you can say, hey, is Jim there? I want to talk to him about, the such and such initiative. Or, hey, is Bob there? I heard you guys are expanding into such and such neighborhood, and I wanted to talk to him about how we can help do that. Something along those lines. If you have those types of little factoids that the gatekeeper will know about, and they will appreciate that you know about them because it differentiates you a little bit, well, then you should mathematically get better results overall if you can insert something along those lines. And that all comes down to research before starting the call. Something kind of similar is to send some type of communication to the decision maker in advance, whether it be via a LinkedIn message or an email or an envelope that you sent into the office, so that then when they pick up the phone and ask what this is about, you can say, oh, I'm following up on the such and such proposal, or I'm following up on the such and such, issue, right? Or the thing that I sent him, right? That just in and of itself sort of sets you apart. It differentiates you a little bit because it sounds in the gatekeeper's mind, potentially, that there's already some type of business going on between you and the decision maker, and that therefore the decision maker would want to hear what you have to say. Now, here's another tactic that people don't often think about, which is kind of the same, but it's in reverse. Instead of you having sent something proactively to the decision maker, the decision maker requested something from you. Now, what do we mean by that? Well, we're talking about those situations where you have a lead page or an opt-in page with a lead magnet, right? So if they're on your blog or your website, or you sent out, ads, you did an ad campaign, you brought people to a landing page and said, hey, if you'd like to learn more about XYZ solution, put in your email address and we'll send you a PDF and so on and so forth. If you have any of those types of things going on in your business and someone actually requested them, even if they didn't put in their phone number, even if it was just an email opt-in form, but you know that the person, the decision maker themselves, did request that information from you, well, then it's totally legitimate to say to the gatekeeper, so-and-so said he was interested in XYZ service, or so-and-so said he wanted to hear more about this or that service. And in the gatekeeper's mind, once again, unless you're lying, and they'll always be suspicious that you might be lying because they get lied to by cold callers all the time, but outside of the suspicion that you're lying, they're going to assume, hey, there's a good chance that this is true and that Bob really does want to hear from this guy on the phone. Now, related to all of this is the next point, and that is intelligence collection. You have to collect your intel. You want to know the decision makers' names, okay? The main one, but then also anyone else in the office. Depending on the size of the business that you're cold calling, there might be a few different managers. There might be a few different managing directors, right? A few different executives. And so have names ready. Have a main guy who you're going through, but it's even better if you have a whole suite of names. And you can say, oh, he's not around. Okay, how about Steve? Is he in? Right? And if you have those names, and particularly those first names, which will give the impression to the gatekeeper that you actually know these people, well, then you're going to have a much higher chance of success. Same thing goes for numbers. If you can collect not just the main business number, but the actual direct lines to these people, that's huge. If you can get a direct line to the decision maker's office, that's absolutely phenomenal. As long as you use it the right way, use it with care, right? Same thing goes for emails. If you have direct emails that can go to the decision makers, that's absolutely fantastic. Business hours, as silly as it sounds, business hours are very important. Not because you want to know about the hours, but because you want to know about the time outside of those hours. Because sometimes calling before or after can help you, and we'll get to that point a little bit later, but you want to know the business hours. Now, there are companies that sell this information, okay? There are software as a service solutions that you can actually get into, and they have a huge database. You pay them, $100 a month or so, and they have a huge database of already collected information about decision makers. And we're talking tens upon tens of thousands of companies all over the United States. maybe even hundreds of thousands. We're talking a lot of information. We're talking first and last names and the positions that they hold within the company and the direct line or the direct email and so on and so forth. And this is really valuable information, and it is worth the money that you pay for it. Now, sometimes it depends on how old the information is. Maybe it's out of date, but it's better than nothing. It's a good starting point, right? If you're ever worried about that, if you think your data is a little bit old, you can always call the gatekeeper and say, hey, is Bob still in charge of such and such? And you get a yes or no from them, and then you can mark that down as accurate information or inaccurate information to figure out who actually is the decision maker that you're going after. And that actually brings us to the next point, and that is use your gatekeeper conversation as an intelligence gathering tool. The gatekeeper is not it's true, you want to just get past them as quickly as possible if possible, right? So your initial goal is to get past them, right? Get through the gatekeeper to the decision maker. But as soon as you realize that that's not going to happen right away, and that you're going to have to have a little bit of an exchange back and forth between you and the gatekeeper, you should immediately switch gears and make that an intelligence gathering mission. Ask the gatekeeper questions. Like we just said a moment ago. Hey, is Bob still in charge of such and such? Hey, who's in charge of marketing? Hey, who's in charge of sales? Right? Hey, how many managing directors do you guys have? Hey, what time does Bill come in the morning? What time's everybody leave? Right? You get this kind of information, and in many ways, it's much more valuable than the stuff you would get from one of those databases that you're paying for, because it's current. It's coming from an actual person who sits right in the middle of the office and knows everything that's going on. So the gatekeeper is an absolutely just incredibly valuable treasure trove of information, and you want to make sure that you use the gatekeeper to that end. One thing you can ask is, what would you say is the best time to call and reach him? What you're doing here is you're setting up a follow-up that sounds like a formal meeting. It's not a formal meeting, okay, but you can sort of pitch it and spin it that way when you call back, right? So if you can't get through to Bill, and Bill is the decision maker that you're trying to reach, and you say, what would be a good time to call back tomorrow that he might be available? What's the best time of day, do you think? And they say, well, yeah, he might be available around 9 to 10 in the mornings usually. That's between his meetings or whatever they tell you. Well, that's good. That's fantastic. You can pencil that in. You can say, hey, thanks so much for your time. I'll try and give him a call between those hours. When you call the next day, you can literally say, hey, I was told to give Bill a call right about now. Is he available? Right? And so you have a point of reference that you can refer back to about a previous conversation that you had, so it doesn't sound like a cold call anymore. I mean, it almost sounds like an expected call. The way you kind of spin it is to give the impression through your tone that it was almost an appointment. Like Bill's expecting you to call, or you were told to call Bill. Right? Which is not really stretching the truth at all. It's you asked what's the best time to call, and the gatekeeper gave you a time. So use it that way. Now, one common thing that you might hear from a gatekeeper is Bill expecting your call? Is he expecting you? Or is she expecting you? And you have to know how you're going to answer this, okay? In fact, we'll talk about a common objections file in a moment. But there's a few things that you can try, and they're a little bit tongue-in-cheek sometimes. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. You want to be cautious. But you could say, well, I sure hope so. Or he better be expecting me, or something to that effect. Especially if you did, in fact, send an email to him previously, or they did, in fact, opt into some type of a lead opt-in form to get a PDF or a lead magnet from you. You have just cause for using the phrase, I should hope so, when they say, is he expecting you? Another variation of this question is, what's this regarding? What's this about? And in those cases, you can either tell them exactly what it's about. You can say, well, I want to talk to them about the XYZ issue or the such and such initiative, or I want to follow up on the such and such that I sent him, right? Or you can take kind of a senior steamroller approach. And that is to say, just tell him it's regarding your name. You just say your name, right? So if your name is John Smith, they say, who's speaking? John Smith. What's this regarding? Just tell him it's about John Smith. Surprisingly, there have been salespeople who have used this to great effect if you have the right tone, and we'll talk about that in a moment. If you have the right tone, that can be very effective. But that's not the only question that you're going to get hit with, and it's not the only objection you're going to get hit with, which brings us to our next point, and that is create and carefully practice answering a common objections file. As you're going through the cold calling process, you're going to notice that gatekeepers tend to ask the same questions or have the same objections or the same excuses. And you want to know what you're going to say when they say those things so you don't have to think on your feet. So if they say, we don't have time for this, well, you want a response to that. Maybe it's sort of the Cardone agree with everything approach, right? Oh, yeah, no, I totally understand. I agree. You don't have time for this. You guys are busy. So what would you say is a good time for me to call you back? Right? Or maybe it's a different approach. Whatever it is, you need to have it rehearsed and practiced and be ready for that objection. My boss doesn't want to talk with sales reps. That's an objection. They might be blunt and say that. What's your response going to be? It might be tripping all over yourself and then mumbling and stuttering if you're not prepared for it. So be prepared for it. We've tried something like this before, but it didn't work. Well, that might be a common objection. It's possible that the gatekeeper will say that to you. You'd think, maybe the decision maker would say that. But the gatekeeper might say that, especially if they are familiar with what's going on in the company. If they know, if you're offering, let's say, reputation management services, and the gatekeeper is close with the executives, and he or she knows that they've tried 2 or 3 reputation management services in the last couple of years, and it didn't work, and they've heard the executives complain about it, guess what? They might come right out and say that to you. They might already have a verbal or maybe even an unspoken understanding with the executives, or what they think is an unspoken understanding with the executives, that they're not interested in hearing any more about reputation management or whatever service you're offering. So they might say that. And if they say that, what are you going to say? You have to have a response planned so that it's right there in your pocket and you can just pull it out. Right there on the tip of your tongue. Just send us some information. That's a common one. Just send us an email. Oh, here, yeah, we'd love to hear what you have to say. Here's our email address. Send us some information. Which 9 times out of 10 means go away. What are you going to say? It's not a priority right now. That's another one. Have a response for that. Have a response for everything that you expect to get, and especially the things that you've noticed that you consistently get from gatekeepers, objections and questions. Have a response, have it rehearsed, and be ready. Now, we talked a moment ago about what you can say when someone's asking if you're expected or what your call is about. And we talked about the sort of steamroller approach, where you're just going straight through them, saying, just tell them it's about John Smith. Just tell them it's regarding John Smith. Or something to that effect. Now, the only way you're going to nail that, and it's going to work, is if you have the right type of tone. And the tone has to be senior, not superior, senior. You want a confident and busy tone, meaning you're a top-level guy. You sound like you're an executive, right? Even if you're not, feel like you're an executive in terms of your tone and your mindset. You're a busy guy. You're an executive who wants to talk to another executive. You're senior to the gatekeeper, and you just want to get to that person as quickly as possible. Kind of dismissive, but not really dismissive. You don't want to have a dismissive or an arrogant tone. It helps, and this sounds silly, but it helps if you pretend that you're writing. Actually, grab a pen and scribble on a piece of paper while you're talking to this person, because that will be conveyed in the tone of your voice. That sense of, I'm busy, I'm senior to you, I'm an executive, and I need to speak to Bob right now. And that will come out in your voice much better if you're actually pretending to be an executive. Not claiming to be an executive, but in your mind. You're sitting there with a pen, scribbling, and just in your mindset, pretend that you're a senior executive. And you're just, you just want to speak manager a la manager to the gatekeeper's boss. So what's this regarding? Just tell them it's regarding John Smith. Right? Not arrogant, not dismissive, but a little bit busy. That's the steamroller approach. You want to be very careful with the tone of voice you use, but that can definitely work. Now, another thing is to actually say that you're the executive. Now, hopefully that's true, right? You don't want to say it if it's not true. But if it is true, well, then making it clear that you are an executive, let's say let's say it's just you. Let's say you have a small business, a small B2B business. You and maybe a couple assistants. You're not a person on the sales floor making cold calls. You're the boss and you're making cold calls. The minute that you identify yourself as the executive director of such and such, or the managing director, or the CEO of such and such company, you will have differentiated yourself from the gatekeeper's idea of salespeople. Does that make sense? So if they say, is he expecting your call, or what's this regarding? You can say, just let him know the CEO of such and such enterprises is calling. Just let him know the managing director over at such and such is calling. And say it with confidence, like you're expecting, in your mind, psychologically, you're expecting that executive director is expecting to hear from you and will want to hear from you. All right, a lot can be conveyed with tone, and for tone to be conveyed the right way, you have to have that mindset. You have to have that mentality already. Another way to get around the expecting your call question, this one's a little bit iffy. All right? It's not directly lying, but you can actually have a policy in your company where everybody who needs to be called has their name written on a sticky note with the words "call them," and slap that on the cold caller's desk so that the cold caller can, with perfect honesty, say when they're asked this question, "Oh, well, I've got a note here. I've got a sticky note here saying that I'm supposed to call him." I mean, it sounds a little bit iffy, right? It sounds maybe a little bit deceptive. It's not technically a lie, but it might come in handy. If that's the last straw, if that's the final thing that you just can't get past, then maybe consider doing that. Maybe consider literally having notes for the people, paper notes, for the people who you are supposed to call, and then say, I've got a note here saying I'm supposed to call them. Next, you don't want to sound like an excited salesperson. Okay, now there's different schools of thought when it comes to actually selling, right? You've got the more, restrained, refined, some people even call it an arrogant kind of approach to selling, where you don't sound very excited. It's kind of a reverse psychology kind of thing. And then you've got the, hey, be as enthusiastic and excited as you can, the car salesman kind of approach. And it doesn't matter which of those is correct. It doesn't matter which one you prefer. The thing to understand here, and remember here, is that you're not selling to the gatekeeper. So by no means, under no circumstances, should you sound like a stereotypical, excited, enthusiastic salesperson. You should not have your sales tone on when you're speaking to the gatekeeper, because you might as well have a big sign on your forehead that says, I am a cold calling salesperson. Protect your boss from me. So it doesn't matter what your sales philosophy is or what you think is best for sales. Doesn't matter. Don't sound like a salesperson on the phone. Don't use either tactic on the phone. And definitely, this brings us to our next point, definitely don't pitch to them. Don't do it. There's this new idea out there that you should actually speak to the gatekeeper and say, hey, can you tell me if you think this or that solution or offer would be a good fit for your company? I just want your opinion. And I'll tell you, it sounds pretentious, it sounds disingenuous, and it's probably going to bore the hell out of the gatekeeper, and the last thing they want to do is sit through it. Now, I'm not saying it can never work. I'm not saying that there isn't a way to do it that doesn't sound pretentious. I'm not saying that there's no chance that you'll get lucky and the gatekeeper will actually, feel flattered and actually listen to you and give you their opinion, and that might help you, get through to the boss. I'm not saying that will never happen, but it is not a good idea to do that. You don't pitch to the gatekeeper. You need to get past the gatekeeper, and you have to remember that. Your job is to get past them, make your pitch to the decision maker. So don't pitch to them. And that brings us to another point, which is keep it short and minimal. Okay? Attention spans are incredibly low in general in life, so you only have like a 20 to 30 second window. to get your message across to the gatekeeper. So make sure when you're practicing and you're typing up a script, make sure to keep that in mind as well. Keep it short and minimal. Don't go into a long, rambling explanation of why you want to talk to the decision maker and so on and so forth. Keep it short and minimal. Next, and there's some debate about this, is humor. Should you use humor? And the answer is maybe. That depends on your personality and your personal skill with humor. All right? If you know that you're good at making jokes, inserting a little bit of humor here and there to make the gatekeeper laugh or giggle, guess what? That's huge. That's golden if you can pull it off. If you can get a gatekeeper to laugh at something funny that you said, that is huge. You have made huge psychological inroads with that gatekeeper. The problem is, if you try to be funny and you don't succeed, well, then you'll do more damage than you would have if you had just not tried to be funny. So make sure you know yourself. This is one of those know thyself situations. Can humor be used? Absolutely. But only use it if you know you're good at it. And don't be silly. Don't turn the whole thing into a comedy thing. We're talking inserting, something humorous here or there, a funny comment here or there, depending on the situation, where it sounds logical and reasonable and, in some form of moderation. Okay, so humor is a maybe, depends very much on you, and just be careful with it. Next up is compliments. Compliments, and we briefly touched on this idea a little bit earlier, but you can make the gatekeeper feel appreciated and respected if you pay some compliments as part of your intelligence gathering. Right, so when you're asking, who's in charge of this or that, or what time do they come into the office, or what time do they leave the office, well, you can pepper that or preface it a little bit with something along the lines of, hey, you probably know more about what goes on there than anybody else, right? You probably know the ins and outs of that place better than anybody. That's kind of a flattering thing to say. But you want to avoid a sense of pretentiousness or false flattery. So this is something you got to be really careful with. Gauge the tone, right? Gauge the mood of the conversation and make sure you deliver it in a very nonchalant way, okay? Because you can very easily turn this into something that actually sounds pretentious and disingenuous and an attempt at false flattery, which makes a person feel like you're trying to manipulate them, right? So it'll actually have a damaging effect if you're not very careful. So use this sparingly, use it very carefully, and just be aware that it is a little bit risky. Now, I mentioned earlier that a part of your intelligence collection should include times, work hours, but not just the posted work hours. Specifically, you want to know when the decision maker usually shows up in the morning and when they usually leave in the evening. Emphasis on the words usually. You don't want the official numbers. You want to know when they usually are there. And even better if you can figure out when the gatekeeper usually shows up and when the gatekeeper usually leaves. If you can find out that information, it's golden. And the reason for that is because one of the best times to try and catch a decision maker is before or after the gatekeeper has come to work or left work. Because guess what? Decision makers, executives, business owners, they very often show up to work before anyone else. And they very often stay late after everyone else has left, has clocked out. And so that's a very, not very often talked about approach. It can be very effective. So figure out what those times are, the unofficial times, the unofficial hours, and try to make contact during those hours. It's a very good chance that the person picking up the phone will be the boss, will be the decision maker, which can be very, very valuable if you handle it the right way. Next, this is a very different approach. Instead of trying to get through the gatekeeper, try going around them. Around them. What I mean by that is there are certain departments that you can get put through to by the gatekeeper that are not trained to be gatekeepers. And that the gatekeeper is not trained to keep you away from. So if you call up and instead of saying, hey, I want to reach the boss, right? And the gatekeeper immediately has their guard up, their red flags are up, right? It's time to do some gatekeeping, right? And instead you say, hey, can you put me through to accounting? I need to discuss something with accounting, right? Or can you put me through to shipping, to the warehouse? Can you put me through to, the guys over in sales? Well, they're not trained to do any gatekeeping or protecting of those departments. Those are boring departments, especially accounting, right? And the warehouse. You're not going to get any resistance, in most cases, from the gatekeeper. They're going to say, sure, let me patch you through to accounting, right? Or accounts receivable, or HR, or even customer support. You just want to get on the phone with someone in an office, maybe not customer support, because then they might actually send you through the customer support funnel. But any of those other departments, you'll actually get on the phone with someone else in another office who is not a gatekeeper, who couldn't care less if you make it to the decision maker. And if you speak to them and start asking them questions, you can use that for intelligence collection, right? Ask, hey, who's in charge of such and such over there? Who's the best person to talk to about this or that? What time does so-and-so leave in the evening? Right? You can ask questions like that. But you can also say, hey, can you patch me through to Bill, which is your decision maker? And it's very possible that some dude in accounting or in sales or in the warehouse has no idea that he's supposed to be a gatekeeper, or that you might be a cold caller, or that the boss is not going to be happy with him. And he'll have the apparatus right there in his work phone to patch you through to the decision maker. So you can do that. You can go around the gatekeeper by going through those so-called boring departments. Those are avenues of attack that the gatekeeper is not expecting anyone to come through. So their guard is not up there. The company's guard is not up in those places. And you can also use conversations that you had with people in sales or in accounting, and you can use that as your icebreaker. Yeah, I spoke to Tom in accounting, and he said that you might want to hear about this, right, when you're speaking to the decision maker. So you're starting off on a note that seems as though it's based on a legitimate conversation that you had earlier. And it is, if you had a conversation like that with one of those people in those boring departments. But more importantly, it differentiates between what they're hearing from you and the vibe they're getting from you and the usual feeling that they have about cold callers and salespeople. Now, a note here about small talk. Small talk can be okay. Now, I know we said we want to keep it quick and concise, small, short, minimalist. But there's going to be gaps in the conversation. There's going to be little periods of pause that are necessary when the gatekeeper is doing something for you. So let's say it's a receptionist and she says, sure, let me check his calendar, right? Or let me look at the schedule and see if he's in a meeting. Or maybe he's just going to, poke his head around the corner real quick and see if, so-and-so is in the office right now, or pretend to see if so-and-so is in the office, right? And any little gaps like those are periods where it's okay to insert small talk. That's where you want to insert your small talk, your rapport building, right? The know, like, and trust kind of stuff. You want to try your hand at some humor and get some giggles. That's fine. All that is okay during the gaps. Okay, so you want to keep the structured part of your conversation short, concise, quick, to the point. But if there's gaps, it's fine to fill those gaps with some small talk. In fact, that is the ideal opportunity to do a little bit of small talk and some rapport building and so on. Next, don't be afraid to be referred down. So let's say that you can't quite get through the gatekeeper to the executive, but she's going to pass you through to someone at a lower, maybe a middle level manager, right? Or maybe you did get through to the executive, and you can tell right away he doesn't want to talk to you, but he is willing to pass you down the chain to Steve, who's, head of sales, right? Or something along those lines. Or to Bill's assistant, over in marketing. Now, just being real, yeah, it's true that that's probably not what you want. And it's not necessarily ideal. But it can actually be used to your benefit. Okay, so don't be afraid if you're getting referred down. Don't give up. If you're getting referred down, you can actually say in a conversation to the next person that you're talking to that the boss sent you. You can say, hey, Bill, or hey, the executive director upstairs said I should talk to you about this. He wanted me to have a talk with you about implementing such and such. Choose your wording carefully. But if you can, spin it in a way that makes it sound not inaccurately. This is actually accurate. If you were referred down, if you can emphasize the idea, the vibe, the feeling that the boss wants them to talk to you about something, well, then you can certainly do that. And sometimes, even if that person at the middle level, let's say, is not able to make the buying decision, sometimes they can book an appointment. Sometimes you can say, hey, can you do me a favor? I really want to talk to Bob about this. It sounds like you're interested in it. Could you please talk to, so-and-so, the receptionist or the executive assistant, and make sure that we get a date penciled in for a quick meeting with you, me, and Bob? Right? That's very possible. Because now it's not just you trying to get the receptionist to get you a meeting booked. You've got a mid-level manager. You've got someone else in the organization who's trying to help you get that done. That's very useful. Very useful. And it's also useful just in the sense of starting a conversation and planting a seed. If the service that you provide, if the tool that you offer, whatever it is that you're selling, is actually really good, and especially if it's something that would be appreciated by, the mid-level folks or the underlings in the company, and you do a good job of explaining that to them, well, guess what? If it's something that affects their day-to-day life, gets rid of one of the annoyances that they have at work, guess what? They're going to talk about it. They're going to mention it to their buddies. And they might even mention it to their boss. They might say to Bob, hey, I really think you should, hop on the phone with that one guy and buy that thing he's selling, because that would get rid of XYZ problem that we have every day. I feel like we could sell, 10 times as much paper if we had that tool that this guy's selling, man. You can actually plant real seeds like that and create demand for your product from within the organization, from the people at the bottom or the middle of the organization. That can be really effective, really effective. So never ever be afraid to be referred down. It's not ideal, but it can definitely be turned and used to your advantage. Now, to sum all of this up, the most important thing you can do here is prepare and practice. Get those common objections and your responses to those common objections ready. Get those things ready, get those things memorized, or have them, on a quick and easy to reference sheet in front of you. Practice. Record yourself. Listen to yourself. Use a partner. Role play with a partner. Practice, but at the same time, don't sound like you're reading from a script. Don't sound like you're giving a memorized pitch. But if you're prepared before the call, and you practice and you're able to deliver smoothly, and you implement all these tips and tricks that we've just talked about, you can have a whole lot of success in cold calling, and it does not need to be something that you dread, and your success rate can absolutely skyrocket. Now, in the next video, we're going to talk about those intelligence collection methods that we mentioned briefly earlier.
Hello and welcome to this course on lead generation. In this course, we're going to cover how to collect leads and build your list. This course is divided into 3 modules. Module 1 covers lead magnets. Module 2 covers landing page design. And Module 3 covers traffic and optimization. By the time this course is over, you'll know how to effectively launch lead generation campaigns and create massive growth for your business. So, without further ado, let's dive into the first module. Okay guys, welcome to Module 1. In this module, our expert will be teaching you about lead magnets and how to create the best ones for your business. So get ready to take some notes and let's jump right in.
Okay guys, so in this lesson, we're going to go over the different types of lead magnets you can use for lead generation. So I'm going to walk through some examples of possible lead magnets, and then we're going to go create our own little example for this course. So starting at the least expensive end of the spectrum, as some might say, we have a little PDF report. These are really common, and I'm sure you've seen about 1 million of them online. If you're on a tight budget or a tight schedule, these are a great way to deliver a little bit of value in return for some opt-ins. Here we have another PDF guide or ebook, and the great thing about these is that you can literally outsource the content writing to a freelancer or license pre-written materials elsewhere if you just can't be bothered to make your own from scratch. One downside of the old ebook/PDF model, of course, is that they have low perceived value, which can sometimes mean lower opt-in rates and less excited prospects. The next step up could be something like a video course. Here we see a bundle of 2 video courses being offered as a lead magnet. For a lot of people, this will have more perceived value than a PDF file. So if there's a simple way for you to obtain or create video content, or even repurpose your textual content into video form, that might help raise your perceived value. Moving even further in that direction, we have a full membership. an academy with a ton of video lessons and courses. As you can imagine, this will be seen as pretty valuable for a free lead magnet. And finally, here we have sort of a bundle, 3 video courses plus a membership. This is really pushing the perceived value of a lead magnet to the max. So let's go ahead and start crafting our own lead magnet. Now, obviously, this lesson isn't going to teach you how to create the actual content. That's something you or your company have to do. So I'm not going to show you how to write a book. What we are going to do is assume that you've already created the content itself, either by you or outsourcing it to someone or acquiring it and licensing it, and we're going to package it into an attractive lead magnet. So let's come on over here to myecovermaker.com, and let's say we want to offer a guide on do-it-yourself home improvement. So let's choose one of the tablet options way down here. That's always a cool way to represent an ebook or a PDF guide. And let's set our background on this to black. Let's stick a little title in here, maybe DIY Home Repair Guide. Let's resize that a little bit and move it around. Okay, and now we need a compelling image. So let's come over here and let's type in construction. This will give us a ton of results to choose from. And let's go with this one right here. We'll bring that into our eCover and reposition it a little bit. Once we're happy with the way it looks, we'll hit Finalize, and we'll give it a few moments to render that for us. All right, not bad. So we've got an attractive lead magnet created here, and the next step is going to be to present it in an attractive way on an actual landing page, which is what we'll cover in the next lesson.
Hey folks, welcome to Module 2. In this module, our expert will be showing you how to design your landing page. So get ready to take some notes and let's jump right in.
All right, so here we are. We're going to create our actual landing page. Now, these are sometimes referred to as lead pages, landing pages, opt-in pages, sign-up pages, squeeze pages. They're called a whole lot of things. We're going to be using Instapage for this process, but the principles apply to any landing page software, and the process will be more or less the same regardless of which one you choose. So we'll start by choosing a template. Your best bet is to keep things pretty minimalist as possible to encourage opt-ins. So we're looking for something with a headline, maybe a subheadline, and of course a form. That's pretty much it. Now this one down here with a picture of a house looks pretty good, and it seems to fit our topic pretty well, which is home repair, if you'll recall. Let's go with this one. So inside the editor here, I'm going to start by deleting all the extra parts that we don't need. Now let's get to work changing the copy. Let's say, finally master the art of DIY home improvement and repair. That sounds good to me. Let's move that up a little bit, and we're going to want some space to insert our eCover from the previous lesson right below that. Once that eCover is in there, we'll change the button text. I think get the guide should be good. And voila, that's pretty much it. Our page is looking pretty good. Before we finish though, we'll want to connect it to our autoresponder software, so we can actually start building our email list. Once that's done, our page is ready to start handling some traffic, which is what we'll be covering in the next lesson.
All right, welcome to Module 3. In this module, our expert will teach you about traffic methods and optimizing your lead generation campaign. So get ready to take some notes and let's jump right in.
All right, guys, so we're just going to briefly touch on two of the most common traffic sources, namely Google and Facebook ads, and then we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of analyzing and optimizing your campaign performance. So first off, Facebook ads are obviously a very well-known form of advertising, and they're regularly used by companies for lead generation. There's a variety of formats to choose from, many of which you've probably seen yourself from a consumer perspective many times. There's photo or image ads. There's video ads. There's carousel ads that contain multiple images or videos. There's slideshow ads, collection ads, which can be used to showcase multiple products, and even messenger ads, which are getting super popular these days. The key word to keep in mind here is native. This is what has made Facebook ads so effective. They found a way to make your ads look and feel as though they're just part of the organic Facebook experience. They look and feel more or less like personal posts, like things that belong on Facebook, hence the word native. Now, right up there with Facebook is Google AdWords, and the cornerstone of AdWords is their search ads. How would you like to put your ads right in front of people at the exact moment they're actually actively searching for your solution? Yep, that's what you're doing here. You're essentially paying to have your search result placed right at the top of Google's results pages. These are incredibly powerful ads, and a great way to drive traffic. Once you've got that traffic coming in, though, you need to be able to gauge and understand your lead page's performance. So let's talk about how to do that. Here we've got an analytics page inside of our landing page software. We're able to monitor all the basic info we'd want to know about our page, like how many visitors are we getting? How many of those visitors are opting in and becoming leads? What's the conversion rate? What's the performance look like over time or on certain days? Are there any trends? So for this one, we've got a great conversion rate. We've had 281 visitors who have come to the page, and out of that, 177 have opted in through that opt-in form, which gives us a whopping conversion rate of 63%. That's 63% of visitors who come to the page and opt in and join our list. That's fantastic. This is important data because it makes our advertising campaigns predictable. When we're determining how much money to spend on driving traffic, we've got an approximate idea of how many leads each dollar of ad spend will get us, which is hugely beneficial when running campaigns. This data is especially useful down here if you're split testing multiple landing pages. Let me show you what I mean. Have a look at this golfing lead page. And now, have a look at this one. See? They're almost exactly the same. You can run the same amount of traffic to each page and then use those stats we were just looking at to determine which one converts better. And believe it or not, a simple change of the background image or even words in the headline or the color of a button can cause a huge difference in performance. Split testing things like that can save you a ton on advertising. Here's an example of a lead page with a 3-way split test, where the only thing that changed was the background image. Have a look at the difference here. Now, even the lowest performing page still has a pretty respectable conversion rate here. But goodness, look at the top performing variation, almost 80%. What we can do at this point is just start funneling most or even all of our traffic to that variation since we know it's performing great. And we're going to be getting better bang for our advertising buck. And now we know of a certain element, in this case a background image, that appears to encourage high conversions, which might come in handy for future lead pages and even sales pages. So that's it, guys. We've successfully gone through the whole process of setting up and optimizing a lead generation apparatus.
Hello, and welcome to this course on search advertising. In this course, we're going to cover how to set up paid search advertisements with Google AdWords. This course is divided into 3 modules. Module 1 covers ad campaign goals. Module 2 covers ad groups and keywords. And Module 3 covers creating the ads and monitoring performance. By the time this course is over, you'll know how to effectively launch search engine ad campaigns and bring in massive traffic to your business. So without further ado, let's dive into the first module. Hello, and welcome to Module 1. In this module, our ad expert will be teaching you about the various campaign goals and how to pick the best ones for your business. So get ready to take some notes and let's jump right in.
Okay, so I'm going to walk you through the various goals you can choose from when creating a search ad campaign in Google AdWords. We'll start here at the main dashboard, and we'll click Campaigns up here on the left. This brings us to our campaign dashboard, and since we want to create a new one, we'll click this blue plus sign button here on the left-hand side, and we'll select New Campaign. As you can see, we've got 7 goals to choose from. But first, let's talk about what the word goal actually means in the AdWords universe. You see, rather than let companies fend for themselves and try to figure out each little variable and option in their ad settings without fully understanding what they do, Google decided recently to help guide advertisers along in understanding and shaping their ads to optimize them for specific common marketing goals. So if you choose one of these goals, you'll see helpful little suggestions next to all the settings and options in the upcoming steps. Suggestions specifically tailored towards your goal. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of the ad creation process, which previously could be pretty confusing. Now keep in mind, you want to pick the main thing you want to accomplish with this particular ad campaign. Let's have a look at each one. First up, there's sales. Google AdWords can help you bring in sales through a multitude of channels, including online stores, sales pages, inside apps, over the phone, and even physically in-store. Now you'll notice down here a list of campaign types associated with each campaign goal. This could be either search ads, display ads, shopping ads, video ads, or universal app ads. Since this course is all about search advertising, we'll want to make sure any goal we select has search as an applicable campaign type, which, as you can see, sales does. Next, there's leads. This is all about getting prospects onto your list. Whether you're building a basic email list or doing more complicated lead generation where you're collecting phone numbers, addresses, or anything else, this goal will help you optimize your ad for maximum return. Since this goal's main focus point is conversion tracking, it doesn't limit you to traditional lead generation. This can also help you optimize for other actions like registering for a webinar or taking a survey. Next, we've got website traffic. Now this goal is arguably the most generic and least specific. I would say this would best serve people who are doing content marketing or just trying to get more eyeballs on their blog posts, and who don't really care about specific actions or conversions. But it could be used for a whole host of things. Then there's product and brand consideration. This is a highly specialized type of goal that's largely oriented towards potential customers who have already started their research process, and you want to distinguish your products or services from others, and encourage them to explore more about your solutions. There's a lot more potential for engagement within the ad with this goal. For example, you can create interactive light boxes and ads with multiple images that they can interact with. It's pretty cool, but as you can see, this goal is only applicable to the display and video campaign types, not search ads, so we can skip it. Brand awareness and reach. This one's all about views. If people click your ads, that's great, but we're really focused on people noticing, seeing, and becoming aware of your brand. Your name, your logo, your unique selling proposition. As you can probably guess, these are very visual ads, and as such, search is once again not one of the applicable campaign types, so we can skip this. Next, app promotion. This one's pretty straightforward. You want people to install and use your apps. This one relies on the universal app campaign types, not search ads, so it doesn't apply to us for this course. Finally, there's the no goal option. This is where you're totally unguided. You've got your pick of any campaign type, and you don't have any tailored recommendations during the creation process. This should only be used by advanced users who know AdWords and ad performance like the back of their hands. And since you're watching this video lesson right now, it's a safe bet that doesn't apply to us. For the sake of this lesson, we're going to go with leads as our campaign goal. So I'll click that, and as you can see, we can now choose from any of these applicable campaign types. We'll choose search ads, and for the ways to reach our goal, we'll choose website visits. We don't really have a demo website for this lesson, so the first random website that pops into my head is everlesson.com, which is a really sweet membership/e-learning platform. So I'll type that in here and hit continue. That will bring us to our campaign settings page, which is what we'll cover in the next lesson.
Hello, and welcome to Module 3. In this module, our ad expert will show you how to create your ads and monitor their performance after launch. So get ready to take some notes, and let's jump right in.
Alright, so here we are on the ad creation page. You've probably seen these search result ads about 1 billion times, right? Now it's your turn to create one. As we create this ad, keep an eye on this preview to the right here. This is where you can see a demo of what your ads will look like on the search results page. Step 1, we need to enter the final URL that our traffic will be landing on when clicking on our ads. Sticking with our previous example, we'll say we're sending people to the membership platform everlesson.com. Now let's create some headlines. These are the most visible and eye-catching parts of your ad, so you want to make sure the most important words are right here, which can require a lot of thought beforehand because there's a pretty tight character limit. Let's say super easy membership platform and start your free trial and point and click no coding. Now the next field here, display path, is optional. If you want your customer to see what specific pages or areas they're going to, you can put things here to reinforce the marketing message. Like if you have a clothing store, then you could put store.com/men's-shoes/outdoor or something like that. We don't really have any need for that, so we'll skip this option. Next, there's descriptions. Now, descriptions could be used to just cram some more extra information into your ad, since the headlines are pretty short. But the ideal would be to include a call to action like buy now or get started today. I think we'll try get your first online course up and running today. Now, more recently, Google added the ability to add yet another 90 characters of description here. That's probably advantageous in many cases, but I don't want my ads to get so crammed with text that the prospect's eyes miss the main message. So I'm going to stick with what we have here. That's it. Our ad is finished. So I'll hit done, and there we go. Our first search ad is ready to go. Now we could click new ad and create a few more ads with different headlines, different angles, and then we could compare later to see which ones work best. For this lesson, we'll stick with just this one, and I'll hit save and continue. This brings us to the final confirmation page, where we see a brief overview of the important details of our campaign. I'll go ahead and click continue to campaign. And here we have the dashboard for our ad groups. Now, it's not going to be very helpful to go over these stats when everything says 0. So let's come over here to a past campaign that already has some data for us to talk about. So here we've got an ad group from a previous campaign that already has some stats associated with it. This one was a test campaign for selling musical instruments. Here you can keep track of a ton of important stuff. For example, we've got the actual keywords themselves, along with a toggle button for enabling or pausing each individual keyword. We've got your max CPC if you set one, whether or not your keyword was approved. But the most important data is right over here. We've got your number of clicks, impressions, which means how many people saw your ads for those keywords, click-through rate, average cost per click, and the total cost from that keyword so far. So to take one of these as an example, the term violin sale has brought in 5 clicks to our website so far. That's out of 148 people who have seen the ad, which gives us a click rate of 3.38%. Now, based on the way Google was handling our bidding, we ended up spending $3.29 for those 5 clicks, which gives us an average cost per click of 66 cents from that keyword. As you can see, this campaign was in its infancy, but you should definitely monitor these stats regularly because over time, with more data, the averages become more certain and the differences in performance between keywords become more clear. If you determine that certain keywords aren't performing that well, or that there's just not enough search volume and you want to focus your budget elsewhere, you can pause individual keywords right here with this toggle option. And there you have it. We've successfully created a search advertising campaign.